Christmas break allowed me a full day in the shop, which truly is a Christmas miracle. So I got to work on the last step in mounting the engine, the transmission mount. I could have done this with a straight piece of angle iron, but I figured I'd add some shape to it for added strength, so I added a 1/2 inch offset at either end. I just made some cuts of the angle iron to get the desired offset. I'm sure I could have figured out the actual notch to get my desired offset, but instead I just cut it and go. I added wings to either end so I could get 2 bolt holes where it mounts up to the frame on either side of the truck.
So I've got the cross member mounted up here. It worked out pretty well. I added some shape into it, so it's just 1/4 inch, 1.5" by 1.5" angle. But I added some shape. I added an offset to it to give it a bit of strength. And then the trans mount itself, I gusseted it up pretty good. Considering most transmission mounts are stamped sheet metal, I think this is going to be more than enough. It's going to take 4 bolts into either side of the frame. I'll drill up through the frame, and it's going to be rock solid. It's going to look good. So what I got going on here, the transmission is mounted and on its mount and supported. When we installed the engine, this little nub here it's resting on the stock cross member, but it's exactly where the engine needs to be. So now that this is in place, when we pull the engine back out, I'm just gonna cut that right off, and then we should have a good 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch clearance. So the next thing I'm gonna figure out is the throttle linkage. I thought originally this was gonna be tricky, but if we look at this, so that's the original throttle linkage. It sits a little bit high, it ties into here. This is the BMW throttle linkage here. So I think between the 2 different linkages, I'll be able to make something up pretty easily and lock it in. Let's work on that.
This is basically a guess and test exercise. Kind of eyeballing where I think I need to cut and seeing what happens. I clamped the 2 rods together to see if I could cycle the throttle to check for interference, and with my preliminary checks, I'll just start cutting and shaping the rod. I think it's been 3 weeks since I've been back in the shop to work on the truck. I don't even remember where I left off. Pops is gonna be here any minute. We're gonna carry on the throttle linkage, probably, and some other stuff. Don't got a lot of time today to be in here. We're gonna get done what we can. After refreshing my memory and figuring out the next step, I decided to just start welding. I get the 2 rods where I want them, clean them up, and glue them together, see what happens. When it was back together and in the truck, we weren't very happy with how it felt. It was more like a 2-stage button instead of a nice smooth throttle. So after some deliberating, we came up with a plan B. Scotty started taking some measurements and drew up a plan for a second pivot point to be installed. With the throttle in motion, I moved to the drive shaft to start to assess the obstacles we've got here. But at first glance, things look pretty close. With the U-joint assembled, I'll get a better idea of the work involved. Made some headway on the drive shaft. It might not be that tricky to do. The original drive shafts are typical U-joint coming right out of the output shaft on the transmission. The BMW is a solid mount. It's got a rubber coupler on the end of the transmission with a 3-bolt mounting system. So this original drive shaft with this fitting ends up only about an inch, maybe even only 3/4 of an inch of the mounting holes on the hanger bearing. So what my hope is, what my initial idea is I'm gonna cut this end of this output shaft from the original transmission. I'm gonna cut that here, and then I'm thinking if we cut this here, I can send this back with Pops and see how good he is on the lathe. If we can open that up in the middle, we can slide this inside, get the height that we need, weld it all up, and it should do the job for us. If that turns out to be the case, we wouldn't even have to get the drive shaft balanced at that point. How awesome would that be? Hope it works.
With the BMW flange cut off, we can start to paint a picture of how it will all fit together, and it's shaping up to be fairly straightforward, but we second guess our ability to machine the pieces and decide to look for help. We'll have to completely mock it up to get a firm measurement if we can find somebody to help us out with it.
So we got our drive shaft figured out, cut the end off of the BMW shaft. What we're gonna end up needing from the center of our yoke to the face of this new flange, we want between 2 1/4, 2.5 inches. So I think I pulled a favor from a friend of ours. He's going to be able to set us up with a machinist that'll be able to open this up inside and slide that into where we need it. We'll weld it up, and that's pretty easy. So as long as we don't screw this up, good luck finding another one of these.
So that's where I think this video is going to end. Made a little bit of progress. So the throttle linkage didn't quite work like I was hoping. It works, but the pedal doesn't feel very good. We're going to have to put a secondary pivot point in there. So Scotty's taking all that information. He's going to try and come up with something for that for me. His brain works way better using that, figuring that stuff out than mine does. So he's going to take care of that. We were looking at the exhaust, and I brought home a car with the same engine as this. It has the stock manifold, exhaust manifold. Just preliminary thoughts and looking at it, looks like that's going to be the way to go. It looks like it's going to fit right in there, and I'm not going to have to modify it like I would if I tried to use these long tube headers that I got. So we'll look at pulling that out when it's not minus 45 degrees outside. Otherwise, drive shaft, I'm going to take the pieces to a buddy of mine. Hopefully we can get that sorted out, and that was what I thought was going to be the biggest hurdle, and that might actually work out to be one of the easiest things about the whole conversion. So that will be awesome. Next step for us, we've already started looking at the shifter location and linkage and mounting, and that might become a lot easier than we first thought too. So we've actually already started ripping out the interior and doing all that stuff, but I think I'll show you guys that next time. Next time on the Ditch Pig. Anyways, thanks for watching. Take care.